Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960. A real pleasure of mine to introduce you to one of the most interesting gentlemen I've had the pleasure of interviewing. The guy's got a resume that you wouldn't believe. He's got a background that is so incredibly varied. I think you'll enjoy our chat. At least I believe you will. Stephen J. Wong. He's a producer and a director, talent acquisition, management, and representation. He's got just an unbelievably interesting background. He is the program director, talent acquisition, management, and representation for Stephen J. Wong Films. He's an elite performance trainer and coach with Wong Mania Elite Performance Systems, and he's the chief operating officer and partner at Canice. You know, what an unbelievably interesting thing to do all of these at the same time. And in the past, he's been the national director for Team Canada strength and conditioning coach and the co-owner and senior vice president, global business operations, brand excellence, and operations for Hockey Shot. You know, how do you do all this? What a fascinating background.
Well, you know what? Thank you for that introduction. It's very well said. And, you know, to sum it up, I just follow my passions, and it's something that's stemmed from literally 3.5 decades of persistence, tenacity, dedication. And to give you everything in a nutshell and give you an idea of how it started, basically I can trace everything back in my career. I can trace it back to martial arts in some capacity. And it's something that, you know, I started when I was 7 years old, and I was very dedicated to the sport of martial arts. And at that time, it was Taekwondo. And, you know, I worked my way up, and, you know, I ended up doing pretty well, third Dan, and transitioned to Hungar style Kung Fu when I really started sinking my teeth. And, you know, when I got my third Dan, I thought it was pretty decent. But when I joined this elite club, Kung Fu club in Oakville, it was not really that much of a commercial club. It was more of an underground club in the sense that it was very, very hard training. And, you know, a lot of people just couldn't keep up with that type of non-commercial style. And so it would narrow down our instructors to, you know, pretty elite bunch, including students as well, I should say. But it allowed me to really be dedicated and focus on excellence. And I had the opportunity there to achieve at a high level and also train at a very high level. And that literally transitioned into every stage of my career. You know, I trained world champions even before I was 20 years old. I was still a teenager. I was training world champions in many capacities. And to this day, you know, I'm very proud of the fact that I still have the same cell phone number that I had in the early 90s. And I still have the same network. I still have the same clients that have been with me all this time. One that you might recognize is Elvis Stoico, 3-time world figure skating champion, 4-time Canadian Olympian. People like that, you know, it stems back to the 80s, and they're still with me to this day. So it's something that I built upon over many, many decades. And again, everything stems from the martial arts.
So are you teaching Elvis Stoico martial arts, or when you say you're training him, what are you doing?
Yeah. So for him, you know, I trained with him in martial arts. He's also a black belt when he's a teenager, an early teenager. He came number 2 in the world for Kung Fu.
Really?
And yeah, the world championships. So for him and all my other athletes, the Wong Mania system that you mentioned, it is an elite performance strength and conditioning system. So it's designed to make you your fast twitch, make you more powerful, make you more explosive, make you quicker. You know, I've trained a lot of NHL players, a lot of UFC fighters, world champions, boxers, and figure skaters, Romanian national champion as well. So
tell me, with a hockey player, are you teaching them Kung Fu or
no, I'm teaching my system of strength and conditioning, which will make their first 3 strides more explosive, allow them to hit harder, be quicker. And I also do a cognitive training as well. So allows them to see the ice better. And that applies to all my clients, whether it's UFC fighter or...
Okay, so this is interesting. Hold on a second. The first 3 strides.
Yeah.
Explain that.
Those are the most important strides in hockey, right? The first 3 strides, you have to be explosive out of the gate. A lot of skaters can skate very, very quickly. So Connor McDavid's, you know, you see him all the time, and he'll hit 35, maybe even close to 40 kilometers an hour. And a lot of players can actually hit that if you give them a long enough of a stretch. What makes him exceptional, and Barzal and people like that, is that they're able to get to that speed in a very short distance. Literally, the first 3 strides is what separates them from everyone else. Because a lot of people hit that.
Is that the power out of your stride, or is that quicker stride, or what is it?
It's a technique that I've designed over 30 years that is very translatable to every sport, where it allows your muscle to explode at a higher rate. So as long as your technique is good, when you're able to generate that explosive power and have it at a higher capacity, you're able to come out of the gates quicker. You're able to punch quicker, harder, kick quicker, harder, jump higher. So that's why it's so translatable to many sports. I had a client on my roster that's the North American Irish dance champion, or she was anyways. And,
Irish dance champion,
Irish dance. And, she's one of my top athletes, and she was so explosive, and she had to do it with her arms straight to her side, because most people don't know the sport, much like I did not know the sport before I started training her. You're not allowed to move your arms. Your arms have to be by your side and stiff. So you now have to generate that power, which is a little change, something that is different for me, because my system is based upon many principles. Well, seven principles really, but one of them is your performance, your running gait. So right arm, left leg, left arm, right leg, just like when you're running. That applies to your stride, it applies to many principles of martial arts. Whereas she wasn't allowed to do that. Her arms had to be strictly by her side. So I modified my protocols to allow her to generate the maximum amount of force and power without using your arms. Anyways, I was going off on a bit of a tangent, but
absolutely fascinating. Yeah. Stephen J. Wong, unbelievably interesting gentleman who credits some of his success, if not all his success, to Kung Fu. We're going to take a break and come back more. And I'm going to ask you about this cognitive training that you do as well. Stay with us, everybody.
Thank you.
What a fascinating guy I'm going to introduce you tonight. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. We're chatting with Stephen J. Wong, who, I don't know how he does it, but he's COO of Canice. At the same time, he runs a film company. At the same time, he runs a training company. And so we're going to have to delve into this in a little bit more detail. But first of all, I wanted to ask you, Stephen, what you were saying just before the break is that you train people on the first 3 strides, and you explained that a little bit. But then you also said cognitive training as well. Tell me about the cognitive training.
The cognitive training is something that's very, very important. It's very fascinating, and it's very overlooked. A lot of people do that physical training. Their advantage is from whether it's hitting the gym or doing the dry land, and they think that's the most important part, which it is very, very important. But when you get to elite levels, when you get to like the NHL or the UFC, everyone can skate quick, everyone can stick handle, everyone can shoot hard, everyone can kick really high, everyone can punch really hard. Regardless of what sport, everyone can excel at a very, very high level. This also applies to CEOs and business as well. When you get to that CEO level, everyone's got their MBA, everyone's got their PhD, whatever the case is, everyone's very educated. Now, what separates the cream of the crop is a technique that is pretty well known, a technique that I use. It's called the flow state. And what that does, it allows you to be more productive. So to give you an idea of my day, like I said, I'm involved in 10 companies as a partner or a principal or a high-level executive. And I have to be able to divide my time and be more efficient than everyone else because I've got such a task list. So the flow state, what that does, it helps you achieve in what a normal person would do in 8 hours, you can achieve that in 4 hours. And that also applies to physical training. So I literally work 20 hours a day. That's not an exaggeration. And normally I'll sleep about 2 hours a night. Anyone that's known me has known me to do that even since high school. And that, again, that's allowed me to tap into so many companies now where, it's a matter of being productive. So
how do you achieve this flow state?
Pardon me?
How do you achieve this flow state?
Well, it's something that everyone can do and everyone has done, but knowing how to trigger it is a real secret. And honestly, this interview is not long enough for me to fully explain it, but to give you a nutshell, think of a toddler. And, the toddler, anyone with kids knows, your kids love coloring or whatever, or playing video games or watching TV. But it gets to the point where you'll notice a switch where if that toddler is coloring and is all of a sudden, using the crayons, it's so focused and so in that zone where they lose track of time. And again, it could be a video game, it could be watching TV. And if little Johnny's sitting there watching TV and you're like, hey, dinner's ready, and they don't hear you. And they're just so focused that they dinner time is past, they block everything out, and they're just so concentrated on the task at hand. I'll go back to the coloring example. If little Johnny's in flow state and he's 3 years old and doing that coloring, when he's lost track of time, and the coloring is the best that you've ever seen. It's no longer outside the lines. It's perfectly shaded. That is a little toddler in the flow state. So my technique allows me to take athletes and put them in that zone where they can see the ice better. So what happens is, in the analogy of hockey, they can see the ice as if it's in slow motion. Martial artists can see they can predict the attack that's coming and counterattack almost like they're a step ahead. So that flow state is, again, is something that is a definite science. It's about knowing how to trigger, and it's slowing your mind down so your body is able to achieve quicker, but it seems like your mind's got more time to figure it out. So basically the state that we're in right now, it's a highly cognitive state, and it's using the beta brainwaves. I slow that down to the alpha brainwaves through my techniques, and then I go theta gamma. Once I got you in this theta gamma brainwave activity, you're able to perform at a higher level. You're able to achieve at a higher level. You're able to execute at a higher level. And everyone knows the opposite of flow state. So I don't know how many times you've been in a situation. It happens to me all the time, and then that's when I have to go back into my techniques to go back into that zone where I'll be reading an email or reading some text. I'm very big on learning. So I read textbooks and studies all the time, where sometimes I'm reading and I'm reading the same sentence or paragraph over 3 times, and I still don't know what that paragraph says. And then I'll say, okay, snap out of it. I'll go into my techniques to get into that flow state. Sometimes you're writing an email and you reread your email. It's a disaster, right? It's, oh man, there's mistakes all over, syntax error, grammatical errors. That's the opposite of being in the flow state. So we've all been in both. It's just a matter of knowing how to trigger. And I work with CEOs as well, a lot of CEOs, to coach them on how to be more productive using flow state. So I don't want to take up the whole interview doing this.
No, but that sounds fascinating. I'd love to know how you do it. My ex-wife used to get mad at me because I'd be reading a book and she'd say, the house could be burning down and you wouldn't notice it because you're so focused on what you're reading. So
exactly.
But I'd love to know how to be able to do that all the time.
Well, you know what? After COVID, you and I will get together, and I'll give you a couple flow state sessions, and I guarantee after even 2 sessions, you'll notice a difference in your productivity, or however we want to apply it, whatever your goals are. For sure, that this training will lead to a noticeable improvement.
So you graduated University of Toronto with a computer science and a criminology background. And then from Staffordson University, you got a master's of science in film, cinema, video studies. Like criminology to film, and you're described as a Renaissance man, and you're involved in so many different businesses right now. Explain that to me. How can you do all this, and why so many varied interests?
So first of all, I'll explain the Renaissance man. I got that nickname from Mayor Patrick Brown and Councillor Martin Medeiros in Brampton. So I'm, amongst my many, businesses, some are volunteer. One in particular is volunteer. Actually, sorry, one is volunteer, and that is being on the board of directors and being the treasurer for PAMA, the Peel Art Museum and Archives. Something I'm very passionate in. I'm not compensated for it. I do spend a lot of time helping out with that initiative, and that's where I met Mayor Brown and met Martin Medeiros and everything.
It's a beautiful facility in an old courthouse.
It is absolutely stunning. For those of you who have not gone there, it is beautiful. It is very, very, so much charm, so much charisma. It is like a hidden gem. People don't even know about it. But once you go in there, if you appreciate arts or if you appreciate the museum atmosphere, it's amazing. So I highly encourage you to visit. But going back to your question, I'm having to tap in my flow state because I'm gone off on a tangent, but so I'm having to tap in to recall what your question was. But so criminology and criminology and crime and deviance, that was my, my two passions. Crime and deviance and computer science, because I was so, I was always passionate about kind of programming and doing building computers back in the day. And I had my other passion where even when I started university, I was already a licensed private investigator. So I'm like, I'm going to do a double major. I want to explore both to see where it leads me. And everything is tied back all together. Where I am now is tied all back together. And again, involves martial arts. And I'll tell you how. So when I was at U of T and I'm studying both, I got this opportunity to go full-time and as an investigator in a management role. So I'd already been working a few years as an investigator, and I got an opportunity to be the director of commercial investigations for a company in Oakville, International Protective Services, it's called. And that's when I started, running a team, applying a lot of my, managing a crew of investigators and executives. And that's when I started doing a lot of bodyguard work, or dabbling in that with that company. But when I went on my own, I did a lot of bodyguard work thereafter, like high level executive protection, again, stemming from my martial arts background. That was kind of the foundation of it. I modified my martial arts training more tailored for, it sounds crazy or it sounds kind of brutal, but it's not, it's just the name. So my system now it's a QKT system, quick kill techniques, that was designed
kill techniques.
Yeah, like, but don't take it so literally where I'm killing someone. The QKT is designed not for sparring. It's not designed for let's point spar. Let's hit. I'm protecting a high level executive, or I'm protecting people like I have done for like Bobby Brown, Janet Jackson, Madonna, A Tribe Called Quest, Chris Isaac. I did a lot of musicians, did a lot of executives. I did a lot of billionaires where I protect these people, and I would have a team. So if they're at a high-end restaurant in Yorkville, I would bring my team and we would be doing everything from their motorcade to dining beside them to make sure that fans are not being overzealous. And in a case where it was an artist or a politician or someone who has, the bigger you get, the more haters you get as well. And I would have to, at that point in time, I'm not looking to get in a fight. My clients are getting physically into a physical altercation, or they risk a physical danger. That's when a QKT has to come in. I have to take these people out right away. And that's kind of the nature of executive protection. It sounds brutal. I might not be describing it that well, but again, it's stuff it's techniques that are designed to eliminate the situation. Obviously, I always try to diffuse the situation, but if it escalates to the point where there's physical altercation, my techniques are designed to eliminate the situation.
Okay, but how did this get you into so many different things that you're a Renaissance man?
So what happened is that stemmed from my investigation company. I was 25, 26 years old. I had 40 employees working for my company. I had contracts with State Farm, Wawa Nisa, WSIB. I was doing pretty well. And it was my own company. I never borrowed money. I self-funded it. And it got to the point where I was pretty comfortable. And my company was very structured. I had myself at the top. I had like a managing, kind of like a managing partner. Then I had senior investigators underneath them. The senior investigators looked after the team of investigators. So I literally only had to work 8 to 10 hours a week, just meeting with the clients and doing the high level, the top level stuff. And the rest of the time, I had 2 Corvettes. I had a convertible Corvette brand new, and I had a ZR1 brand new. I was driving around in my Corvettes, and I thought this was life. You know, it's the summer, the top's down. I'm like, this is great. You know, I'm living the life. Then after about 6 months, it got awfully boring. I'm like, you know, I lost a passion at that level. Because what I loved about PI work is I love being in the field. I love being with these celebrities. I loved, you know, the adrenaline and kind of the risk involved almost. And when I got to the point where I was just managing a team, I said, you know what? It's not worth the money because I'm getting bored. I'm going to pivot. And I started my design company by going to the world's biggest bookstore. It doesn't exist anymore, I don't think, but I went and bought $5,000 worth of books, and I bought them on design, filmmaking, and on computers. So I already knew how to build computers. I built PCs back then, had 8 screens back in the day. So I learned the fundamentals. I basically went to college to be a graphic designer and a filmmaker. I taught myself with these books, and you know, I started a design and branding company, and I started getting some pretty decent clients. And then I made the pivot. And at that point, I was one of the very first people to incorporate high definition video onto a website using Flash 4.0 back then. And so I was HD video in a website in a time when websites weren't even commonplace. So I had some pretty big clients, some private clients at the food terminal, the Ontario food terminal, where the budgets were about $35,000 to $50,000. It's going back to the you know, around the late 90s, I think. No, actually, hold on, let me get my timing straight. No, it would be in the mid 2000s.
Right.
So I was way ahead of the curve. So I started getting some bigger and bigger clients, and I was doing everything myself. I was a one-man show. I would do the branding, do the logo design. I would do the website, and I would also shoot the videos by myself and edit them and do the sound score, voiceover, and all that stuff. And then one of my first big breaks after I had a decent portfolio was Tim Hortons. They hired me to do a commercial. And back then, you know, it was probably about $35,000 for a 30-second commercial. And I thought, wow, this is great. So I started building upon that. And after I got the Tim Hortons commercial, I started doing commercials for Volkswagen and LG and Gatorade. And then again, I made the transition from design and branding more towards the filmmaking side. And I started doing the commercials and doing some documentary films. At that point, I'd sold my investigation company because the passion was gone for that. The flame was dead. And I transitioned to filmmaking.
And the whole time you're still doing the Kung Fu training?
Oh, to this day. To this day, I'm still
you're doing all this other stuff. You're still doing the training, and then you go on to Staffordshire University and do a Master's of Science in Film. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a Master's of Science in Film.
Yeah. So basically, after I was getting these pretty big clients for doing commercials, so Gatorade is an example. They hired me. I forget what year it was. It was. I'm trying to.
A while back.
2008, I think it was. 2007, 2008.
Stephen,
Stephen,
we're going to take a break for a message and come back more and hear about this Master's of Science in Film and what your thesis was on. Stay with us. Stephen J. Wong, fascinating conversation. Welcome back to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour, Saga 960. Really interesting conversation tonight with a self-described, but also by Patrick Brown, Renaissance man, Stephen J. Wong, who credits a lot of his success to his Kung Fu training when he was just a teenager. And then he ended up training a bunch of other people in numerous different sectors, including an Irish dancer in some of his secrets, and his cognitive ideas about actually getting into the flow. I'm really intrigued by it. I want to find out more about it. But, Stephen, I don't know if you know, but I've got a little bit of interest in hockey, and the idea of those first 3 strides and how critically important those first 3 strides are, and how people can turn what's going on on the ice into slow motion. That all sounds pretty fascinating. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. But you said that you did this Masters of Science in Staffordshire University, and I was really intrigued because you did then a master's thesis, the monetization of social media in the fitness industry using film. Yeah. Tell us about why you went to do the master's in the middle of such an incredibly illustrious career, and why this for your thesis topic.
Yeah, so just to clarify, it initially was a Master's of Science. I ended up with a Master's of Arts because I actually did a change in my thesis. But anyways, going back to the first Gatorade commercial I did, I think it was like 2008. And then they hired me again in maybe 2010 to do another commercial. And this was kind of pretty standard. You know, I'd have some pretty big clients doing some pretty big commercials, but you never know when your next gig is. And then I was like, you know what? There's a better way of doing this. And in 2010, with the launch of Instagram, I started getting really, I started drilling down really into the principles of monetization for Instagram, even though it wasn't being monetized at that point in time yet by most people. And I started looking at how influencer marketing could be a contributing factor to creating passive income, because I didn't want to do active income anymore. I didn't want to do one commercial, get paid, and not know when I'm going to have another gig from that client. I wanted to do something once and get paid still 5, 6, 7 years down the road after doing it once. So basically, I went back to university at Staffordshire, and my thesis was, like you said, the monetization of social media using film in the fitness industry. And what I did a 4-year application-based thesis, where a lot of people are doing theoretical thesis. I did an application-based. So what I did, I just showed my opening bank accounts, I showed my closing bank accounts, I showed my system, I showed data, metrics, analytics, and I proved that my hypothesis and how I built the system would work. And I used real-time, real athletes, where at that point in time, I was already representing a lot of athletes, namely some in the fitness industry, in the physique industry. 3-time Miss Olympia bikini was on my roster, bikini champion Ashley Kaltwasser. And I had like 70 athletes on the roster. So I picked a few, and I showed the opening bank accounts, and I used my my principles of shooting film and using it for Instagram, using it for Facebook, and using it for online, and showed how from scratch we can create a system that would be passive and be something that would really be revolutionary for these clients. Because when you're in that field, whether it's a UFC fighter, a NHL player, or a physique competitor, you really don't know, for the most part, unless you're the elite of the elite, you don't know how long your career is going to be, and you don't know how much money you can really make. So you have to strike when the iron's hot. So what I did is I brought these people onto my roster that I represented. I was their agent, I was their manager, and I would create these passive income systems where we'd design a program for online consumption, and we'd do it once, we'd film it, we'd create the sales funnels, landing pages, all the sites, and the paywall, all the back-end systems, all the PDFs, and all the live workout videos. And I'd put it online, and we'd market it using my system. And I proved that it was very, very successful over that 4-year span when I did my thesis. And to
can you share with us what the secret of the system is?
Again, it is something that I'd be talking for over a week. And there's so many components as to the system, but basically is the stages. The first stage is to develop that audience, create that hungry buying audience that like you, that trust you, and they follow you, and you have that, you're like the celebrity authority in their eyes. And you have to create that engagement, whether it's on your Facebook, whether it's on your Instagram, whether it's your TikTok, whether it's your YouTube. Once you create that audience and you have a critical mass, then through analytics and data, you figure out, this is a new way of thinking, you figure out what it is that they want. So before, in conventional bricks and mortar, I would have this pen, and I think this is a great pen, and I've got expertise in making pens and making them unique and making them better. And I think I can sell this pen. I'm just gonna go out there, and here it is. I'm gonna open up a store in a mall, in a strip plaza, and here we go. So that I consider almost like putting on a blindfold, spinning around in like a 720 or however many spins, and throwing that dart at that board, hoping to hit the bullseye. Whereas now we build the audience. Once I build the audience, I find out through the metrics and data
what the
audience, yes, you got it, you nailed it, what they want. And then we create a digital product catered to exactly what they want. Then we get the extremely high conversion rates. So that's kind of, it's hard to, it's like saying, well, Stephen, how do you build a car? Well, it's not just as simple as, you know, putting on 4 wheels and, you know, putting an engine in and making it go. There's so many components to it, but that's how we do it in a nutshell. And it's been very, very successful in creating passive income for my clients and for myself that has allowed me to have all these businesses that I truly have passion for. You know, honestly, every month I get an opportunity to become a partner or an executive or CEO, wherever the case may be, in a certain venture or a consultant for a company. And I turn down these opportunities every month because unless I really am passionate about it, like yourself, you're passionate about hockey. I'm very passionate about hockey as well. In that my whole family plays. My son's AAA, playing in the GTHL in his minor midget year. I also coach junior hockey. That's one of my 10 things. I'm a paid coach and trainer for that team. So everything ties back to things that I'm passionate about. And I'm allowed the luxury of doing that because of the passive income that I earn.
And you're also COO, Chief Operating Officer for Canice. How do you, what's that entail, and how do you do that at the same time as you do everything else?
Canice literally takes up 95% of my time, to be honest. And it's because I'm very passionate about it because the people, the founders of the company, this company was founded about 11 years ago. I was already heavily involved in that hockey training market, knowing synthetic ice and hockey training aids. I had never heard of Canice. But then I was approached by one of the co-founders. His name is Danny Gare. You might recognize him. In 1980, Danny Gare led the NHL with 56 goals. He twice scored 50 goals or more. His number is retired in Buffalo. His jersey's in the rafters. So he played in the NHL for 14 years. So he and my other partner, Mike McGraw, founded this company 14 years. And Mike McGraw is an Ivy League from Columbia University, played captain of the hockey team there and captain of the football team. So these two great partners found me and convinced me to join Canice, a company that was in my area of expertise that I've never, ever heard of.
And what is Canice? Canice programs, but you also own rinks, do you not?
Canice is the best synthetic ice company in the world, by far. And like I said, when they found me, I'd never heard of them. I do tons of market research. I knew every one of my competitors out there. I'd never heard of Canice. So when I actually met the founders and realized that these guys are truly doing it for the right reasons, in 10 years, I'd never taken a draw from the company. They're doing it to try and improve the speed and skill of the game. And then I said, when I tried Canice, I realized that, wow, it was night and day. I was already senior vice president, part owner of Hockey Shot at that time. When I tried Canice, I realized that is the next level. There's nothing even close to it. No other synthetic ice comes close to it. It's the next best thing to real ice. That's when I said, yep, I'm going to join the Canice team, and I'm going to apply everything that I did in my master's thesis and everything that I do for companies. I'm going to apply it to Canice, and the results have been astronomical. You know, we're talking, hundreds, 1,000%, gains in revenues in a very short period of time. So it really transformed the company, really put Canice on the map. They didn't have a real website before. They didn't have Instagram, but all of that, no one really knew about this company. Now everyone knows about Canice. Everyone in the industry that wants to play hockey and train outside of the real ice and are looking for synthetic ice, everyone now knows about Canice.
And so, so tell me what it is. You buy the synthetic ice and you put it in your backyard or in a gymnasium or what?
You put it in your backyard, you put it in your basement, you put it in your garage. I have it in my garage. I have it in my basement. People like Sidney Crosby have purchased from us. Jonathan Taves has purchased from us 4 different times for his 4 different homes. As recently as like 3 months ago, he purchased for his place in Phoenix. Pavelski purchased from us last year. Jonathan Marchessault, Vincent Cavalier. It is crazy. We're the only approved synthetic ice company of Hockey Canada. So it's truly something that we're all passionate about. And again, we're doing this for the right reasons. Just like when I coach this junior A team, the amount that they pay me is not worthwhile for me, to be honest. It's really not worthwhile, but I do it because I love doing it.
What junior A team are you coach for?
It's Brampton Admirals, OJHL.
And how long have you been doing that?
2 years.
Excellent. Yeah. And you're also the trainer. That's kind of unusual for the coach to be the trainer.
I'm the assistant coach and trainer. So performance trainer. Yeah.
And you use the Kung Fu strategies, the strength strategies, and the cognitive strategies with them?
100%. 100%. The cognitive is used before every single game. The strength and conditioning part is something I do whenever we get the opportunity to do that. As you know, in the hockey season, it's a tremendous grind during the season. So, the athletes are being depleted, much like the NHL. They're getting depleted throughout the season. It's in the off season when they make their gains. I was hired when Dion Phaneuf was a captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. He flew me out, actually my whole family, out to PEI, and I trained him, Alicia Cuthbert, and a whole crew of NHLers at his private gym for a full month, 3 hours a day, at his place in PEI, which was it was unbelievable. And we did the cognitive training, we did the explosive power training, the Wong mania training, essentially, and it's something that, like I said, applies to every single sport out there.
And last year you did a reality series. What was that?
So the reality series is not out yet. I have a filmmaker that I apprenticed about 8 years ago. He's in his final year at Humber in the film program. And, since gone on to do some pretty good things, pretty big things. He's part of IATSE, the union. He's doing very, very well for himself. There's a whole crew actually got into the unions after I apprenticed them. And, he's got credit on Drake videos. He's worked for Guillermo del Toro. He worked 3 seasons on Suits, the series. And so he approached me last year and said, "Hey, Steve, I'm going to back off the unions because I was working like a crazy amount of hours. I want to go back to normal hours with the union, maybe 40 hours a week. I want to do my passion projects." And he's like, "I want to do a documentary on you and show," because he's seen me juggle. He's seen me juggle all these companies. And he's like, he's like, to document what you're doing and create a reality series from it, because it's so fascinating. I think a lot of people can learn and be interested in seeing your system at work on your own companies. So that's something that we have. The trailer is out. You might have seen the trailer, and we haven't released it yet because there's still so much to capture. But so that's something we're working on. And it's not even one of the 10 things that are on my list for my businesses.
We're chatting tonight with Stephen J. Wong, really quite interesting guy who credits a lot of his success in life to Kung Fu when he was a teenager. And he uses Kung Fu techniques and strength and conditioning techniques to train a junior A hockey team and a lot of professional athletes and even some CEOs. Pretty fascinating. We're going to take a break and come back with some concluding comments from Stephen in just a minute. Stay with us. What an interesting conversation I'm having tonight on the Brian Crombie Radio Hour on Saga 960 with Stephen J. Wong, who is a fitness coach, a COO of Canice, a company that sells synthetic ice, a trainer of athletes from a strength standpoint and also a cognitive standpoint on flow. and also does fascinating films of different athletes and creates recurring revenue. So it sounds like he's got his hands full, no question about it. And then, Stephen, I understand that you're doing something with Russian athletes. What's this all about?
So it's more than just athletes. It's called Russian Heritage Network. They've been around for quite a few years, and they're doing amazing things. I've seen their growth. I came in touch with them because Andrei Vasilevsky he loves Canice, so I was dealing with him and Canice. So I met Russian Heritage Network through Andrei Vasilevsky, and essentially I was appointed the CEO of the company, and we're dealing with players like Ovechkin and Barkov, a slew of NHL players, but also everything to do with the Russian culture. We're also dealing with players like Maria Sharapova, the Grand Slam champion in tennis. So it's something that I'm very passionate about as well. It sounds funny, but I've been a lifelong Leaf fan, and I've got one jersey, and you'll never guess. Brian, I want you to guess, what Leaf jersey is it?
Henderson.
It is Alexander Mogilny. So one of my favorite players of all time, along with Fedorov, Konstantinov was another one of my favorite players before his tragic accident, unfortunately. But I've always been a huge fan of Russian hockey. I don't know why. I just love the way they play the game. And so when the Russian Heritage Network approached me to be the CEO, I'm like, yeah, I'm all over that. So yeah, that's how I got involved with them.
Fascinating. Unbelievable. So Stephen, let's summarize if we could. I think that if people are listening today and they may not be able to take your courses, they may not be able to go back to their teenagehood and redo Kung Fu, but you've talked about determination and confidence and flow, amongst some other things. If you had to summarize it, what are the secrets to your success if you could apply it to sort of the general population?
Honestly, the secret is just repetitions. Just like martial arts is repetitions. You need 10,000 reps in anything you do. For me, I make that 50,000 reps. I want to be a master of something. So it's relentless determination in everything that you do. And it doesn't have to be physical. It doesn't have to be repetitions per se, something physical. It has to be, find something that you're passionate about and invest all your time and effort into doing that. And eventually it will pan out. If you're passionate about shoemaking, well, make those shoes with all your heart and spend 20 hours a day doing it, and always continuing to learn. That's the biggest thing. I will never stop learning. And it's something that, whether it's a textbook, whether it's a PhD, whether it's learning from my peers or learning from my employees or students or learning from my mentors, is something that's the most important thing to me. So it's learning and it's tenacity and working harder and smarter. And that's where flow comes in. You have to work not only hard, but you have to work smart. And that's honestly the secret to my success.
So lots of people during COVID-19, I think, have felt a little bit, at a loss, unfocused, wandering around. So how do you get this relentless determination, this passion? How do you get that?
I always say, and I feel for those people that you mentioned during COVID. I have a lot of very good friends that have lost their businesses. And, a lot of them have contacted me and asked me for advice. And I always say, the old saying about, if you have lemons, you have to make lemonade. So instead of, saying, oh man, I've lost my family business during this pandemic. Yeah, well, and hating on the pandemic and saying this is a conspiracy, that I don't believe in this. And you can't worry about that. What you have to worry about is doing what you do. I'm not a medical expert. I can't give advice on whether Ontario is doing the right thing or not and doing all these lockdowns. But what I can do is adapt my business and adapt what I do to make the most of it during these times. For example, prior to COVID, I'd flown 11 of the previous 12 weeks. for business. And that's very common for me to have to be all over the world. I have not flown since March 9th when I got back from, I forget where it was, Minnesota. And I canceled trips the following week to Australia, to Vegas, to California, and I've canceled hundreds of trips since then. So my final thought would be, you have to adapt to the current situation and make the most of it. And during this time of lockdown, my training has been more focused than ever, because I can now set aside the time to do so, because I'm not traveling. I'm not wasting time in airports and hotels. So just make the most of the situation, but knowing how your skills can be applied to the current situation.
Some great words from Stephen J. Wong tonight. Adapt to the situation. Determination, relentless determination. Find your passion, tenacity, always learn, and work hard and work smart. Stephen Wong, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Brian, it was my pleasure. And that was very well summarized, by the way. I'm impressed. And I'm looking forward to the end of COVID so we can get together for some flow state training.
And learn how to get in a state of flow. Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Thanks for joining us. Good night, everybody. Thanks, Stephen.
Thank you.